Listen to me very carefully right now. I'm about to share something with you that will change how you see every relationship in your life. Every single person who has ever fallen in love with you, every person who will fall in love with you in the future, they're doing it for only two reasons, just two. And once you understand these two reasons, once you truly grasp what I'm about to tell you, you'll never look at love the same way again. You'll never wonder why someone chose you or didn't choose you. You'll never question your worth in a relationship, because you'll understand the fundamental laws that govern human attraction and connection. I spent years studying human behavior, watching people fall in and out of love, analyzing what makes some relationships last decades while others crumble in weeks. And what I discovered shocked me. It wasn't about looks, though looks play a part. It wasn't about money, though financial stability matters. It wasn't about status or success or any of the things we've been told matter most. No, it was something much deeper, much more fundamental, and much more within your control than you ever imagined. The first reason people fall in love with you is because of how you make them feel about themselves when they're with you. Let me say that again, because this is crucial. People fall in love with you because of how you make them feel about themselves. Not how you feel about them, not how they feel about you, but how they feel about themselves in your presence. This is the most powerful force in human attraction, and most people completely miss it. Think about the last time you felt truly alive, truly confident, truly yourself around someone. Remember that feeling? That person didn't just make you feel good, they made you feel like the best version of yourself. They brought out parts of your personality that you forgot existed. When you were with them, you laughed louder, spoke more confidently, took more risks, dreamed bigger dreams. That's what I'm talking about. That's the first reason people fall in love. When you're around someone who makes you feel like the most interesting, most capable, most valuable version of yourself, something magical happens in your brain. Your neurons fire differently. Your chemistry changes. You start associating that person with the feeling of being your absolute best self. And that feeling becomes addictive. It becomes something you crave, something you need, something you can't live without. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think this happens by accident. They think it's chemistry or fate or some mysterious force beyond their control. They think some people are just naturally good at making others feel this way while others aren't. That's complete nonsense. Making someone feel like the best version of themselves is a skill. It's something you can learn, practice, and master. And once you do, you become irresistible. Let me break this down for you. When you meet someone new, within the first few minutes of interaction, their subconscious mind is asking a fundamental question. How do I feel about myself when I'm with this person? Do I feel more interesting or less interesting? Do I feel more valuable or less valuable? Do I feel more confident or more insecure? Do I feel like I'm growing or shrinking? The answer to this question determines everything. Most people walk through life completely unaware of the energy they're projecting. They're so focused on trying to impress others, so concerned with how they're being perceived, that they miss the most important thing happening in every interaction. They miss the opportunity to make the other person feel extraordinary. And because they miss this opportunity, they wonder why their relationships feel flat, why people seem disinterested, why connections don't develop into something deeper. But you're different. You're going to understand this principle and use it to transform every relationship in your life. You're going to become the person who walks into a room and immediately makes everyone feel better about themselves. Not through false flattery or empty compliments, but through genuine interest, authentic curiosity, and the ability to see and reflect back the best in others. Here's how this works in practice. When you're talking to someone, instead of thinking about what you're going to say next, instead of worrying about how you sound or how you look, you focus entirely on them. You listen not just to their words, but to the excitement in their voice when they talk about their passions. You notice the way their eyes light up when they mention something they care about. You pay attention to the moments when they seem most alive, most engaged, most themselves, and then you do something most people never do. You reflect that energy back to them. You ask follow-up questions that show you're genuinely interested. You make connections they might not have seen. You help them explore their own thoughts more deeply. You become a mirror that shows them their own brilliance, their own uniqueness, their own value, and in doing so, you become unforgettable. I remember working with someone who couldn't understand why they struggled in dating. They were attractive, successful, intelligent, funny. On paper, they had everything going for them. But every relationship seemed to fizzle out after a few dates. So I observed them in action. I watched how they interacted with potential partners. And what I saw was fascinating and heartbreaking at the same time. This person spent every conversation trying to prove their own worth. They talked about their achievements, their travels, their insights, their opinions. They were charming and articulate, but they were performing. They were so focused on being impressive that they never made the other person feel impressive. They never created that magical feeling where someone walks away thinking, wow, that was the best conversation I've had in months. I felt so interesting, so valued, so seen. The transformation happened when they learned to flip the script. Instead of trying to be impressive, they started focusing on being impressed. Instead of trying to be interesting, they started being interested. Instead of showcasing their own value, they started recognizing and celebrating the value in others. And suddenly, people started falling for them left and right. But making someone feel good about themselves goes deeper than just good conversation skills. It's about creating an environment where they feel safe to be vulnerable, where they feel encouraged to take risks, where they feel supported in pursuing their dreams. It's about being the person in their life who believes in them even when they don't believe in themselves. When you consistently make someone feel like the best version of themselves, something profound happens. They start to see you as essential to their happiness. They start to associate you with personal growth, with joy, with possibility. You become connected in their mind with all the things they love most about life. And that's when love becomes inevitable. Now, the second reason people fall in love with you is equally powerful, but completely different. People fall in love with you because you represent a future they want to live. You embody possibilities they're excited about. You show them a version of life that feels more meaningful, more adventurous, more fulfilling than what they currently have. You become a gateway to the person they want to become and the life they want to live. This isn't about having a perfect life or being further along than everyone else. This isn't about material success or status symbols. This is about energy, vision, and direction. This is about being someone who's actively creating something beautiful with their life, someone who's growing, someone who's moving towards something meaningful. When people see you, they see possibility. They see a path forward. They see hope. Think about the people you've been most attracted to in your life. I bet they weren't necessarily the most conventionally successful or the most traditionally beautiful. But there was something about them that made life seem more exciting, more possible, more worth living. Maybe they had an infectious passion for travel. And suddenly you could imagine yourself exploring new cultures and having adventures you'd never considered. Maybe they had a creative project they were pouring themselves into, and being around them made you feel more creative, more willing to take artistic risks. Maybe they had a way of approaching challenges that made obstacles seem like opportunities. Maybe they talked about the future with such enthusiasm and clarity that you could see yourself being part of that future. Maybe they had a perspective on life that made everyday moments feel more significant, more beautiful, more worth savoring. That's what I'm talking about when I say they represent a future you'll want to live. But here's the crucial part that most people misunderstand. You don't create this effect by having a perfect life or by having all your problems solved. You create this effect by having a clear vision of where you're going and by actively working toward that vision every single day. You create this effect by being excited about your own growth, your own possibilities, your own future. When you're genuinely excited about where your life is headed, that excitement becomes contagious. People don't fall in love with your current circumstances. They fall in love with your trajectory. They fall in love with the direction you're moving, the energy you're bringing to your life. the intentionality with which you're creating your future. They see you actively becoming someone, and they want to be part of that becoming. They want to grow alongside you. They want to be part of the story you're writing with your life. This is why people often fall in love during times of transition or growth. It's why travel relationships can feel so intense, why people are drawn to others who are pursuing education or starting new careers or moving to new cities. There's something irresistible about someone who's actively creating change in their life. Someone who's not just drifting, but deliberately steering towards something meaningful. But you don't need to be in a major life transition to embody this principle. You can create this energy in your everyday life by developing what I call future vision. Future vision is the ability to see and articulate where you're going, not just in terms of career or external achievements, but in terms of who you're becoming as a person. It's about having goals that excite you, projects that energize you, growth that you're actively pursuing. When you have future vision, conversations with you become different. Instead of just talking about what happened today or complaining about current problems, you're sharing insights about what you're learning, discussing plans that excite you, exploring ideas that could lead somewhere interesting. People leave conversations with you feeling like they've glimpsed possibilities they hadn't considered before. Let me give you a concrete example. I knew someone who worked an ordinary job, lived in an ordinary apartment, had an ordinary life by most external measures. But they had this practice of constantly learning new skills. Not because they had to, not because their job required it, but because they were genuinely curious about how things worked. They would spend months learning photography, then switch to learning about urban gardening, then dive deep into understanding behavioral psychology. What made them irresistible wasn't any single skill they developed. It was the energy they brought to the process of learning. When they talked about their latest project, their eyes would light up. They would share insights that made you see familiar things in new ways. They would invite you to try things you'd never considered. Being around them made you feel like life was full of interesting possibilities waiting to be explored. People started falling in love with them, not because of what they had accomplished, but because of who they were becoming. They represented a way of living that was curious, engaged, always growing. They showed others that you could take an ordinary life and make it extraordinary through the simple act of remaining excited about learning and growing. This is what future vision looks like in practice. It's not about having dramatic goals or making radical life changes. It's about approaching your life with intentionality and excitement. It's about having something you're working toward, something you're learning, something you're becoming. It's about being able to paint a picture of your future that's so compelling that others want to be part of it. But future vision alone isn't enough. You need to combine it with what I call growth mindset energy. This is the belief that you're capable of changing, that you're not fixed in your current patterns, that you can learn new skills and develop new capacities. When you carry yourself with growth mindset energy, you become attractive to others because you represent the possibility that they too can change and grow. Most people are stuck in fixed mindset thinking. They believe they are who they are and that's that. They've accepted limitations that don't actually exist. They've stopped believing in their own capacity for transformation. But when they meet someone with genuine growth mindset energy, someone who's actively working on becoming better, something awakens in them. They remember that change is possible. They remember that growth is available to them at any age, at any stage of life. This is why people are so attracted to others who are actively improving themselves, whether that's through fitness, education, creative pursuits, or personal development. It's not about the specific area of improvement. It's about the energy of someone who believes they can become better and is taking action to make it happen. That energy is contagious and incredibly attractive. When you combine these two principles, when you become someone who makes others feel great about themselves while also representing an exciting future they want to be part of, you become someone people can't help but fall in love with. You become what I call a love magnet, not because you're manipulating anyone or using tricks, but because you're embodying the fundamental qualities that create deep human connection. Now, I want to address something that might be running through your mind right now. You might be thinking, this sounds like I need to change who I am to make others love me. That's not what I'm saying at all. In fact, it's the opposite. What I'm talking about is becoming more authentically yourself, but the best version of yourself. It's about developing capacities that already exist within you, but might be dormant or underdeveloped. The ability to make others feel valued and important isn't foreign to your nature. You experienced it before. Think about times when you've been with close friends or family members, times when you felt completely relaxed and open. In those moments, you naturally focused on them, naturally celebrated their wins, naturally supported them through challenges. You weren't performing or trying to impress. You were just being present and caring. That's the energy I'm talking about. You just need to learn to bring it to all your interactions, not just the ones where you already feel comfortable. Similarly, having future vision isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about getting clear on what you actually want from life and taking steps toward it. It's about reconnecting with parts of yourself that might have gotten buried under daily routines and external expectations. It's about remembering what excites you. What are you curious about? What kind of impact you want to have on the world? The most attractive people aren't the ones who are trying to be attractive. They're the ones who are genuinely engaged with life, who are growing and helping others grow, who are moving towards something meaningful while bringing others along for the journey. They're not perfect, but they're actively working on becoming better. They're not fake positive, but they have a genuine optimism about what's possible. Let me tell you about the transformation that happens when you truly embody these principles. First, you stop feeling needy in relationships. When you know how to make others feel valuable, and when you're excited about your own future, you don't need validation from others to feel worthy. You're not looking for someone to complete you or fix you or make your life meaningful. You're already creating a meaningful life, and you're looking for someone to share that journey with. This shift in energy is immediately apparent to others. People can sense when someone is needy versus when someone is whole and complete on their own. The person who's desperately seeking validation repels people, even if they can't explain why. The person who's already complete but open to sharing that completeness attracts people like a magnet. Second, you become genuinely interested in others rather than just trying to get them interested in you. But when you're not desperately seeking approval, you have mental and emotional space to really see other people. You start noticing things about them that others miss. You start asking questions that no one else asks. You start having conversations that go deeper than surface-level small talk. This creates a profound experience for the other person. In a world where most people are half listening while thinking about what they're going to say next, you become someone who truly sees them. In a world where most interactions feel superficial and rushed, you become someone who creates space for real connection. This is incredibly rare and incredibly attractive. Third, you start living in a way that naturally generates interesting stories and experiences. When you're actively pursuing growth and moving toward an exciting future, your life becomes more dynamic. You have more to talk about because you're doing more, learning more, experiencing more. You're not just going through the motions of daily routine. You're actively creating a life worth talking about. This doesn't mean you need to be constantly traveling or having dramatic adventures. It means you engage with your life in a way that creates natural material for connection. Maybe you're learning a new language and having funny experiences with language exchange partners. Maybe you're training for a fitness goal and discovering things about your own mental toughness. Maybe you're working on a creative project and having insights about the creative process. Whatever it is, you're not just consuming life, you're creating life. And that creative energy is attractive because it suggests possibility. It suggests that life with you would be dynamic, that there would always be something new to explore, something interesting happening, some way to grow and evolve together. Now, I want to dive deeper into the first principle because it's more nuanced than it might initially appear. Making someone feel good about themselves isn't about constant praise or telling them what you think they want to hear. That approach actually backfires because it feels fake and manipulative. Real attraction happens when you help someone access parts of themselves that they value, but might not always express. Everyone has aspects of their personality that they're proud of, but don't always get to show. Maybe someone is naturally very thoughtful and insightful, but their daily environment doesn't give them opportunities to express that side of themselves. Maybe someone has a great sense of humor, but they're usually in serious professional settings where that humor stays hidden. Maybe someone is naturally adventurous and spontaneous, but their current routine has made them feel boring and predictable. When you learn to recognize these hidden aspects and create space for them to emerge, something magical happens. The other person feels truly seen and appreciated for who they really are, not just the surface level persona they present to the world. They feel like you understand them in a way that others don't. They feel like they can be fully themselves around you without judgment or pressure to perform. This is completely different from generic compliments or surface level flattery. This is about recognizing someone's authentic strengths and creating environments where those strengths can shine. It's about being genuinely curious about what makes them unique and then giving them opportunities to express that uniqueness. For example, if you notice someone has an interesting perspective on things, you don't just say, "You're smart, that's generic and forgettable." Instead, you ask them questions that let them share that perspective. You create conversations where their unique way of thinking becomes apparent and valuable. You help them feel like their mind is something special, something worth sharing. If you notice someone has a caring nature, you don't just say, "You're nice." You put them in situations where their caring can make a real difference. You ask for their advice when you're facing a challenge. You involve them in activities where their natural empathy and concern for others can shine. You help them feel like their caring nature is a gift that makes the world better. This requires you to become genuinely curious about people rather than just trying to manage their impression of you. It requires you to pay attention, to notice subtleties, to remember details that others forget. It requires you to care more about drawing out their best. And when you master this skill, something beautiful happens in every interaction. People walk away feeling energized, feeling seen, feeling like they matter. They associate you with that feeling. They start looking forward to talking with you because they know they leave feeling better about themselves than when the conversation started.